Hi everybody, and welcome to this tutorial video on dispatching using relay interlocking devices in Simrail. I'm hoping that this will be a completely comprehensive tutorial in that it will teach you the basics of dispatching using relay devices, but also prepare you to progress towards more and more complicated relay devices that are available in this game. So we will start with the most basic relay device in this game, which is probably Julius, at least at the current version. And then just very quickly look at some other relay devices too and see how they are a little bit different. There are of course other tutorials that have covered the Julius relay device, but have then failed to talk about how other relay devices on more complicated stations will be a little bit different. So I'd figure I will make this video where I will also include that a little bit, including also how you perform some special actions that you might want to do every now and then. So as I've said, the best relay device to probably start with is the one on the Julius station. Now of course it can be quite scary when you're new to dispatching to handle player trains, so if it makes you feel more comfortable you can always look for empty servers. There are pretty much always some servers that are very empty that you can use to practice with just bot trains, stuff like that. I will just head into English 1 and head over to Julius. I will say before we get into this that you probably want to start out with using computer devices, so you can get used to reading this timetable and you know how the basics of dispatching works. So it's probably best to start with computers, and then once you're used to that you can move over to Julius and start trying relay devices. Okay, so let's start out with just checking out a few of the basic things of how a relay interlocking device will look and stuff like that. So let's start with these lines going through here that all have some small lights on them. These are, as you might expect, your tracks going through your station. Here we have track 1 and track 2, and we also have a track here, but that one is closed, you can't use it in this game. But we have track 1 and track 2, and those are just these tracks going through right here. We also see some yellow lights. These will be your junctions, and the yellow lights are used to display which direction the junction is currently set up at. We see a small little plus sign which basically shows which direction is straight. This will be quite important, particularly at bigger stations like Katowice, where some junctions might actually look like they are diverging even though they are actually straight. So that's when these sort of things are useful. And each junction will of course also have a button that you can use to switch that junction around. So right now this one is set to straight, but I can right click and hold. You always have to hold with buttons on relay devices. So right click and hold switched it to diverging position, and you could see the light switched to show that. So if I now sent a train through here, it would diverge onto this track, and I can of course left click to move it back to straight. So that's how that works. And on this station in particular we also have a road crossing that will be these lines here. Not all stations have these of course, but this one in particular does. And it also has some bars here that will represent the barriers. So currently the barriers are up and these are not lit. But if I go over to this crossings buttons here, I can both open and close the barriers. So if I want to close the barriers, I left click and hold here, and I give it a moment. And eventually these will turn on, displaying that the barriers are currently down. Okay, I have a train coming through here, which I will just handle. And while that is happening, I'll just talk about some of the other stuff here. We of course have these signals with their corresponding letters and a button, which you will use to route trains through. So that's how signals look on a relay device. Now, if we look over onto the right side of this relay device, we will see some arrows. These will basically be your line lock arrows that show the current line lock. We have outbound line lock arrows for when I want to send trains away from my station. And we have inbound line lock arrows for any inbound trains. Now this is of course line 171, which has two tracks shared. So the default will be to send tracks down the right hand side, as you probably know at this point. But currently there isn't even a line lock actually set up here. So in order to send a train through here, I will have to request that. Now we actually have a train 42128 waiting at G, so let's deal with this train here. So first I will have to go over here and look for a button that is most of the time close by, not always, but here it is. It's called line lock enable button, and I can left click to request an outbound line lock direction. Now this will send a request over to Dorota, the station that's a few kilometers down here, to set this line lock. And now it's solid white, so they have accepted my request for a line lock. So now I have an outbound line lock set for this line. Then I will have to make sure that any road crossings that the train has to go through are closed. And they already are in this case, as I actually have another train moving through right now. So these barriers are closed since the lights are on. And then I have to double check all the junctions to have them set up the way I want. Of course, in this case, I just want to send this train straight through. In this stage, you will probably not mess around with these junctions that much. Of course, when you move to larger stations like Katowice and Zawiercie, then you will use junctions a whole lot more, of course. But the junctions are just straight now. That's how I want them. I have the road crossings closed. I have set the line lock to outbound. And now I should just move over to the signal where the train is and set the train route. And basically what this will do is draw a train route from the signal through the junctions you have set up and either continue on through your whole station or until it encounters another signal, which will be very common at larger stations. And now we also see here that the track lights switched to white, which basically show which route you have currently set through here. And they will also turn red once a train enters that track segment. Let me just go over here and tell Dorota that 42128 is on its way. So that's how these arrows work. Now in this case, on this station, these are temporary line locks, which basically means that once this train has passed and once Dorota has confirmed the arrival of that train, this line lock will be released and I will have to request a new line lock for the next train. There are many lines that are very busy and where there is a lot of traffic, and they will actually have permanent line locks where you will just be able to pump trains through without having to request a new line lock each time. So the line lock will stay in place until you decide to release it using a line lock release button. This one doesn't have that kind of button because these are not permanent line locks. So this will be released after this train and I will have to request a new one for the next train. Now if we look on the left side of this board, we actually see another setup here. These are not arrows, they are just some bars that show different track segments. And in the case of these, I do not have to request line lock directions. I can just send trains through And equally, Sosnowiec Dańdówka can just send trains through without having to request any line locks. Okay, so this track has cleared now, so I can open the barriers. And here's another important thing to remember, that once I have received a train, either from one of these sort of lines with these bars, or a temporary line lock line, then I will have to find a train arrival confirmation button and click that. And that will clear this section. And this basically tells Sosnowiec Dańdówka that I have received the trains and I'm ready for any new trains that you might have. You may have noticed also that the light that was just previously sort of a white yellowish light has turned off now. Basically, this light turns on whenever you have received a train and whenever it's time to confirm a train arrival. So it's important to remember this, as I said, both for these sort of things and also for temporary line locks. But you need to do this before the station next to you will be able to keep sending trains through. So here's a button for that, and you will also see it on these arrows with temporary line locks. Now, if you ever click a signal and the route is not cleared, you will probably have to double check something. Maybe the junctions are not correct. Maybe you haven't closed a road crossing. Maybe the track you're trying to send the train through is occupied. It could be a few different things. Now, apart from these whole things that we've just gone through, there will be some clusters of buttons at other points of the board, which are dedicated to some special actions. For example, here we have substitute signal buttons, which I will talk about later. We have track occupancy override buttons and run through status reset buttons. I'm not sure when you need these. I've never had to use these during my quite a few hours of dispatching on relay devices, so you won't really need to worry about these, I don't think. You also have train route release buttons. These can be useful sometimes, and stuff like that. And of course, for some larger stations, these clusters will be bigger and have a lot of buttons, because of course a bigger station means more buttons, really. Okay, so now we have an inbound request coming in from Dorota. You can see the inbound arrow is flashing. So then we have to look for a allow inbound line lock direction and click that to allow this inbound line lock. And this is also a temporary line lock in this case. There we go. So now Dorota will be cleared to send a train through my way. So this is basically the other side of what we did, where we requested a line lock. We requested an outbound line lock. So they would, on their side, get this whole inbound line lock flashing thing. So when you see that, an inbound arrow flashing, just find the allow inbound line lock direction button and press that, and you will get a solid white arrow showing that you've accepted the request. Now, as you can see with this arrow right now, it's solid white to show that I have accepted a request for an inbound line lock. And eventually, once the Dorota sends a train this way, it will first start flashing red, which basically means that, oh, here we go. Good timing, Dorota. This just means that Dorota has now routed a train through towards this station, but it is not quite on its way just yet, but it will be shortly. So right now it's flashing red. So that means we should expect a train to come through pretty soon. Okay, Dorota just said 24129 has departed on track 1. And this arrow has turned red, which basically means that train 24129 has passed Dorota and is currently on its way here. We can see that it's coming up towards signal A, and it's a few kilometers away. Now on this station, it is mostly freight trains, and it's also very slow speeds, so sometimes it can take a while for tracks to clear, and it can be quite infuriating sometimes. Now, as far as this train goes here, which is it? 24129. Once I have, accepted an inbound line request, it will work pretty much the same way as it did when we sent a train through the G signal here. So I will just set up the junctions, close the barrier. In this case, of course, I will not have to request an outbound line lock direction with these things. That would be the same even if I had these arrows, but they were permanent line locks. I will show you how those sort of permanent line locks can look in another station. And once I had junction set, road crossing is closed, then I can just press the signal and I will get a white light. And once 24129 has entered my station, I will have to look for this light shining in a white yellowish light and press the train arrival confirmation button, which will essentially release this line lock and wait for a new request from Dorota. So I hope that makes sense. Maybe it seems a bit confusing, but of course you can just rewind and rewatch what I do. And once you get the gist of it, it's really quite simple and not really that different from a computer device, apart from the fact that you have to set up all the junctions yourself instead of relying on the computer to do it for you. Oh, I will actually say one thing here that I will have to remember when I send through 24129. This is something you will have to remember for these sort of lines with these bars, as I keep calling them. You will find a train departure confirmation button. So basically, when I send a train through here, this light here will be red. And once the train has passed my station, I will press train departure confirmation, which will basically move this red light over to here. And then I will have to wait for this red light to turn white before I can send other trains through. So that's also something you have to remember for these sort of things, that once you've sent a train through and it has left, press train departure confirmation to sort of confirm that the train has departed. And those are the basics, really. Now we will go through some special actions that you might need to do. And after that, I will also quickly show you some other stations and how they can be slightly different from each other. Okay, so let's talk about substitute signals. If you don't know what substitute signals are, it's basically a way for you to allow a train through a red light, but at a slow speed. Now, of course, you want to be very careful with substitute signals and you don't want to use them very often. You will learn to sort of realize when you should use substitute signals and not. You will have to be extra careful with junctions to make sure that they are set up correctly, because in the worst case scenario, you might derail a train. And of course, you want to make sure that you're not sending it in the path of another train and stuff like that. So be careful with substitute signals. So anyway, I have a train here waiting on signal A, 24129, which I cannot send through right now because this track segment is occupied. I could always wait, but maybe for some reason I really want to send it through because maybe I have a bunch of other trains that need to come in from Dorota or something like that. In this case, I will probably first check with Sosnowiec if the path is clear. So we'll go over here and press and type 24129 on track 1. Okay, so they say that it should be clear. So now I can check at the signal. This is signal A, and then I will have to go to the cluster buttons for substitute signals. They will be up here. They will say S, Z, and then a big letter. And you basically want to look at the last letter and find the one corresponding with the signal. So if I want to send a train through signal A, look for SZA, then press display substitute signal. And here we see this substitute signal flashing on signal A, which will basically allow 24129 to pass at a slow speed. And as we can see, Dorota is immediately sending a train through. It of course gets a little bit goofy with this whole train arrival confirmation in that I can't really confirm it when I send through on a substitute signal. Also, these substitute signals are temporary, so they will revoke themselves after 90 seconds, or I can go here and revoke them myself by left clicking. So now it's back to normal, and I can wait for the next train. So that's how you do substitute signals on relay devices, and as I said, you want to be very careful with these. Don't just use them however as much as you like, you know, you want to be careful with them. But that's how you do it for those occasions where you need to use them. Okay, so let's talk about train route releasing, which is basically a way of saying canceling a train route, really. So let's set up a train route towards Dorota here. Now let's say that I, for some reason, changed my mind and don't want to use this route anymore. So here's what I usually do. First, I revoke the signal, which is just the same button as set the train route, but right click. That will turn it back to red. But you see, the route is still here, so I have to actually release this route, and for that I need to find the train route release buttons, which in this case are here. They will have just a small little Z and then a small little letter right next to it. And just as with substitute signals, you want to look at the last letter and find the corresponding signal. We set a route from signal G, so look for G, and we can even see here that they have a small little light shining next to it just to show that there is a route set through that. So I will have to right click, which sort of releases a little I don't know, some sort of latch thing or whatever, and then right clicking again, and now we see it cleared up the route. Now actually clearing the route will also turn the signal red, but I just think it's kind of nice to get the signal red as soon as I can, particularly if there actually is a train on its way towards the signal. Now of course you don't really want to release a train route unless you can be certain that the train will have time to stop at the signal. You know, you can't really do it if the train is 500 meters from the signal and traveling at 100 kilometers per hour, then it's really too late. But if it's far enough away, it should be fine to cancel the route. Now the problem here is of course that this thing is still red, which is a problem because then I can't really route a train through here. But of course there are ways to get around that. I can always use substitute signal. I'm not really sure, maybe there's a way you can fix this, but otherwise you can just use a substitute signal, and hopefully it will clear up once a train has been sent through. But of course this is not a problem you will run into if you just cancel sort of internal routes that are in your station. Yeah, that's how you cancel a train route on a relay device. It's basically just these buttons, and if you want you can also revoke signals using buttons on these. Okay, let's talk about using the left track on a dual track line. So right now I have a train waiting here on signal A, but I can't send it through right now because this line over here is blocked. But maybe I can try sending it through on the left track. Usually before I do this I check, and right now I should not see anything from Sosnowiec Dańdówka until around 15:28, which is in quite a while, so I might be able to send this train through on the left track. So how do you do this? Well, first of all I have to set up the junction. I want this train to come and diverge to the left track, and for that I have to move this junction to diverging. There we go. Then I will of course have to close the barriers once I want to send it through. But first I have to check with Sosnowiec Dańdówka if the path is clear. This is something you have to do when you want to send a train down the left track. So this will be track 2. So let's go over here and I will use this command. 24175 is the train I want, and I want to send it down the track 2. Oh, it's unknown. Oh, it was the wrong train number, my bad. 24127 on track 2. Is that clear? Okay, and it says that it's clear. Perfect. Now I will have to go over here and look for this little button that says allow left track usage. Click this to turn it on. I will close the barriers and wait for those. There we go. Now I should be able to send this train through. There we go. So now the train will come here, it will diverge and use the left track instead, since this right track is currently occupied. And you know, I could of course wait, but I really want to send this train through in this case because I have a lot of other trains waiting in Dorota to be sent through. And I will also tell the station that I have sent it through. No, wait, 24127 on track 2. So that's how you send trains through on the left track on a relay device. So set up the junctions, ask if the path is clear from the station, then click this allow left track usage. Now we see also that I have one of these buttons for going the other direction. So for example, if Sosnowiec Dańdówka wanted to send a train on the left track, then I would have to click this button to be able to route a train through on my left track. I was asking about the wrong train, but well, you get how it works. So, alright, so that's how you send tracks down the left track on relay devices. So yeah, now we've checked the basics of how this works. We've also talked about a few special actions that you might need to use occasionally. So now I'll just quickly show some other stations and how they will be slightly different from this station to essentially prepare you for all the sort of relay devices you will come across in this game. Starting off with Slavkov, this is a level 3 station, and when you first arrive it might seem a bit messy, but it's actually not that different from Julius. You will have a single line passing through the station on a double track, and then there will just be some additional things. You'll have 2 road crossings to contend with in this station. There will also be some sidings, which you might want to use occasionally if, for example, you have a train with a scheduled layover. I'm not sure if that's very common at this particular station, but maybe it will happen. Otherwise, you might use it to let higher priority trains pass any lower priority trains. And you will of course have to use some junctions to diverge trains into the sidings if that's something that you would need to do. Of course, you also have a passenger platform where you will have some passenger trains stopping, so be sure to keep an eye out for that on the timetable. But apart from that, it's very similar to Julius. To the right you will have temporary line locks that you need to keep in mind. And to the left you will see the similar sort of line that we also saw on Julius, where you will not have to set any line locks, but you will have to remember to confirm train departure. And of course, for both of these directions you will also have to remember to confirm train arrivals when you receive trains. Now, one little quirk with the road crossings in this station, and this is something you will see on other stations with road crossings too, is that the road crossing barriers don't have buttons on the board for opening and closing. So instead you will have to use the CCTV system to open and close these barriers, which is a bit fiddly and kind of annoying, but that's just what you have to do on this station and a few others. Apart from that, not much different from Julius, just a few additional things, probably a little bit more traffic, but easy to handle once you get a bit used to it. Next up we have Dorota. This is also a level 3 station, but maybe a little bit larger since we have 2 lines meeting on this station. So there will be one line having 2 tracks in the middle, and then to the left and right side of that one there will be another line. And that will mean that you will have some trains switching lines, which will mean flipping around a few junctions every now and then. Because of that, this is a great station to start getting a handle on flipping around the junctions and diverging trains through junctions on relay devices. One piece of advice I will give with handling several lines in one station is to keep an eye on the line number that you will find on the timetable for each train. That might help you sort of locate where a train is supposed to go. So look for the corresponding line number on your relay device. The only other thing I will say is that temporary line locks is the name of the game on this station. That's what you will find on all the lines here. But at this point you will be quite used to it, so it shouldn't be a problem. You might also sometimes have quite high traffic load, but overall it's a pretty calm station. But there might be some spikes of activity every now and then, which is also of course good practice. Finally we have Opoksniopoludnie. I'm probably butchering that. It's not really a name that's easy to pronounce when you're not Polish. But anyway, this is a level 4 station. But it's actually not so bad as far as level 4 stations go. I think it's been placed in that level because it has a passenger platform that's sort of awkwardly placed on the side of the main line, which can be a bit of a hassle sometimes. But this is an example of a high traffic line passing through your station. So here you will actually find these permanent line locks that will remain in place until you choose to release them, which is something you will have to do if you for some reason need to switch the direction of a line lock. On this station I think it will really only be extreme cases where that's something that you would want to do. But if that happens, you will have to find a release line lock button, which should be close to the line lock arrows. Once a line lock has been released, then you can request a new line lock direction, or perhaps receive a request for an inbound line lock from a neighboring station. And that's all there is to it, really. At this point you will have seen everything that you will come across on the current relay devices in this game, so it will be all about improving your ability to handle a lot of tracks, a lot of traffic, a lot of passenger platforms, sidings, and all of that stuff. Eventually you will be able to go to the big boy level 5 stations and handling those, which can of course be quite stressful and busy, but also of course very entertaining. I wish you the best of luck with learning relay devices, and I hope that you will find this tutorial helpful in that. If you have any questions, or if you feel like I've missed something, you can of course write a nice little message in the comment section. If there are any important points that I see brought up, I will put them in the description of this video. So you can always have a look there in case I have failed to mention something in this video. But yeah, best of luck with learning relay devices, and maybe I'll see you in Simrail.